It's a David and Goliath type of scenario where you've got this huge meat industry, this animal industrial complex with thousands of lobbyists and lots of money to be able to create doubt. And they've done a great job over the last couple of years in creating doubt about meat alternatives. I keep thinking, what is our slingshot? What is that tool that's gonna beat the Goliath? I feel like the stone is truth. We have truth on our side, but what I don't know is what is the weapon, what is the tool that's going to deliver that truth. I'd never heard of Tofu Town either, being honest with you, Anant, but
Yeah.
we've acquired the business. It has two facilities. The one in Lundberg near Hamburg is massive. I mean, I got my 10,000 steps in just having a tour around the factory. It's just to give you an idea on the scale. It's got warehousing with up to 5,000 pallets. It's got huge lines. Over the years, this business has invested tens of millions in machinery and in equipment. They're a major supplier into Aldi, Lidl, Edeka, DM. They supply HelloFresh, all of this in the German market. So they're more of a private label supplier, which is why they maybe have gone under the radar a bit. But I think the Lumberg factory, as far as I'm
Yeah.
aware, it's the biggest plant-based factory in Europe, possibly the world. I mean, I need to double check it, but it is honestly, it's massive. So we're looking at that from a vegan food group perspective and thinking,
Hi there. I've got some great guests coming up in the pipeline, so do please subscribe so you don't miss out. Now back to the show. Hi there, and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome back Matthew Glover, the Chief Mission Officer from the Vegan Food Group. He owns several brands such as VFC, Meatless Farms, and Clive's Pies. And he's already come on once, so if you haven't seen that episode, please do go back and watch it. He was also the co-founder of Veganuary and helped launch Veg Capital. Hey Matthew, how you doing?
hey, Nan, thanks for having me on the podcast again. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. And you're joining us from Cape Town and you're working from there at the moment, which looks fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. No, we decided to just get a bit of winter sun, and it's not a holiday. We're working as normal, but in between emails and Zoom calls, I'm hopefully just trying to get a little bit of sunshine as well.
You managed to get up to Table Mountain?
No, do you know I get scared of heights, so I've been sort of like not really keen on that one. But we're having the weekends exploring, so we're seeing some of the sites.
Yeah, I mean, talking about scared of heights, I just spent a few days in Bournemouth. At the end of Bournemouth Pier, they've got a zip wire which goes from the top. So you imagine climbing up one of those big, stairs where you got a slide going down. So you got these metal tower going up, and you got a zip line going to the beach. So I managed to do it. It was scary stuff, but it was like, yeah, it was pretty awesome. So yeah, I just don't try not to
Congratulations.
think about the height.
Yeah, no, I just wouldn't have even gone up there at all. I don't mind taking risks, I go undercover into factory farms and do things that are scary.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
It's what 44,000 chickens it looks like.
Oh no. Oh.
In the 17 days that they've been in here, there's been about 900 so far that have died. Here's one example. You can see she's been stepped on by the other birds, but she's just one example. But each one's an individual.
All these guys have personalities and they're denied the ability to express that in a place like here where they're just a statistic really.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, man. It's really sad.
But heights, not for me.
Wouldn't do it, yeah. So you are the Chief Mission Officer for the Vegan Food Group. Can you tell me what the mission of the group is?
Well, when we started VFC originally, which is what Vegan Food Group has evolved from, if you like, then it was about reducing suffering of animals. It was how do we create alternatives that are going to have a positive impact on the planet, particularly in terms of, reducing the numbers of animals in the food system. So, that really hasn't changed from a vegan food group perspective. I mean, I think we're having to grow up in terms of our thinking, I guess. And the portfolio is going to grow and the categories that we're involved in are going to grow. But ultimately, what gets me up every morning is trying to fix this problem, which is the suffering and the unsustainability of animal agriculture.
Yeah. And I think when you think about these large FMCG companies that have also been part of that industry, but then some seeing the potential a few years ago, especially with Unilever announcing, I think it was back in 2020, where they announced the target of 1 billion in sales for plant-based products by 2025. Do you think that's still realistic now, especially, I guess, in relation to market conditions and potential, I guess, negative PR about plant-based products?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically about how Unilever are getting on with that target, and I'm not entirely sure what they mean by plant-based, because the definition can be quite broad. I mean, if it's just meat alternatives, then I would imagine that they're going to struggle to achieve that target based on the current conditions. The numbers that I'm seeing, unfortunately, they're not great. The Nielsen and the Kantar data that I've seen for the UK for the last year or so probably 2 years, it's been in decline. I think last year probably somewhere between 5 and 6%.
Did they say what those numbers are? Like, as in, I guess, what sales numbers they're seeing from those two sources?
Yeah, so Vegan Food Group purchases the data. So I'm not entirely sure how much I'm allowed to say, but I think in broad terms, in chilled and frozen, it's down 5, 6, 7%. The data that I've seen for the US, it's much worse. It's like 20%, 20 to 25% down for chilled and frozen meat substitutes. So, and 2023 was a decline on 2022 was, there's been a decline over multiple years, sort of 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, I was really hoping that the figures that I would see for December, January would see it bottoming out and get back into growth. The figures I've seen for January so far don't really show that, unfortunately. The declines are reducing, so that's a positive sign, but we haven't quite got back into growth yet.
Yeah. What do you think will make that change? Like, how will the growth happen? One thing that I think about is whether there's a new category to be formed, such as more plant-based food, but obviously more clean label, less ingredients, etc. And I don't know whether people are wanting to have that more as well, like versus highly processed food. Like most food we get today anyway is highly processed, right? But is there now more of a category to have less ingredients on plant-based products? And do you think that might win the growth, or do you think it's something else?
Look, I think it's really complex question with a lot of nuance in it. I think that the points that you make are valid, and I think some of the companies are already working on cleaner label and less ingredients, which is positive. The challenge is to be able to do that and still have the taste that people are expecting, and so that's a bit of a conundrum. But I wish I knew the answer. It's a David and Goliath type of scenario where you've got this huge meat industry, this animal industrial complex with thousands of lobbyists and lots of money to be able to create doubt. And they've done a great job over the last couple of years in creating doubt about meat alternatives, whilst at the same time arguing that meat is part of the solution, if you like, in terms of climate change and stuff. So, I'm aware that Robbie Lockie has set the Freedom Food Alliance up to try and help counter this narrative. These industries have levy programs and checkoff programs. So in the US, there's examples such as Got Milk and Beef It's What's for Dinner. And, they have these collective marketing pots of money that these sectors use to really raise the water level generally for for their products. And we haven't been doing that. I mean, with hindsight, we should have been doing it 2 or 3 years ago. We haven't been doing it. But I'm working with IndyCar in the UK about how do we create a national consumer marketing campaign that's going to work for the benefit of the plant-based industry as a whole and try and bring an alliance of companies together. Indy's also working on a roadmap, plant-based proteins, and she's invited many of the plant-based companies and retailers and food service operators and NGOs to come to a meeting, and let's try and work out strategies to how we get things back into growth. We're obviously going to need more money to invest into the companies, and we have had a bit of a crunch over the last 12 to 18 months, so we're going to lose some companies. It's a natural phenomenon quite often in these new technologies that you get this sort of increase and then you get this trough of disillusionment. And I just hope that we're in that trough now and it's going to get back into growth. Yeah, I mean, we just all need to raise our game. We need to learn the lessons from what's happened in the last 2 to 3 years. And it's going to be a multifaceted approach that we're going to have to work on together.
Especially like the Got Milk one has been around for years, right? And there's a lot of still people, even the younger generation, who would think in a similar way, or even parents who would be saying, yeah, you need to give your children cow's milk because of things like calcium or something, or protein. In the UK, have you seen similar campaigns? Like I remember, like even when, going to primary school, you used to have milk given to you in class with maybe a digestive or something. And then I think they started to phase that out. But I think that's kind of the big industries working their way into government. And the government piece is so critical here, especially with subsidies that these big corporations are getting and how they ingrained themselves, even with government's help, into fast food restaurants, to things like including cheese, which wasn't a big thing in burgers before. What's been done in the UK, especially with disinformation that you've seen?
Well, there is one campaign currently running from the AHDB. They're running a 4 million campaign at the moment on TV, through PR, through social media. And it's Eat Balanced, or Let's Eat Balanced. So the idea is that really forget what you're hearing about plant-based. Lamb, beef, dairy are part of a healthy diet is what they're pushing. And yeah, I'm not sure how successful. I'd love to see what category data shows for beef, lamb, and dairy over the next few months and see whether or not that campaign's worked. I noticed unfortunately, it was a great campaign for the lamb industry in Australia, but they produced a very, very clever TV advert that really put lamb at the center of like generations and how it brings the old people and the young people and the families all together around lamb. Which, I don't know why slaughtering sheep and eating them actually brings people together, but that's how they positioned it. And the advert looked great. In terms of the disinformation side of it, I mean, we have all of the same lobby type groups. The NFU, if you follow their social media accounts and others, like there's one called farming.uk, which I follow on Instagram, you can see that they're riled by the threat that they see from plant-based, from vegan activism, and they're very defensive and they're coming up with their own angles. And a lot of them are overly simplified. They don't necessarily make a lot of sense, but it works. I mean, people at the moment, farmers particularly, in society are trusted. It's not a winning strategy to go and target farmers and suggest that they're lying to us. Maybe the lobby groups we can get away with, and big meat companies more so. But yeah, it's a conundrum. It's they're winning at the moment. Unfortunately, it's a fact. So how do we go about solving that? I'm hopeful about AI. I think I've been having conversations with people about potentially how do we train these large language models so that, in the future, when people go on to ChatGPT and other platforms, that automatically, it creates doubt about, RSPCA assured, or tofu is a real positive thing to be eating, whereas chicken, maybe you just need to be a bit careful about it. there's a window of opportunity for us as activists to train those large language models to work in our favor going forward. So that could be, when you talk about, I mentioned the David and Goliath thing earlier, I keep thinking, what is our slingshot? What is that tool that's going to beat the Goliath? I feel like the stone is truth. We have truth on our side, but what I don't know is what is the weapon, what is the tool that's going to deliver that truth.
Yeah, understood. I mean,
So
yeah, I mean, the AI topic is also fascinating. My next interview that I've got lined up is with Sam Tucker from Open Pause, and I think it's fascinating what he's doing. And it's all to do with this training data. If these large language models don't have the relevant information in the first place, and then more and more people start using these models as to seek the truth from the stone, if you like, and it doesn't paint that picture, and then people will start believing it, especially the way the tech is moving at the moment. Like I even did one the other day and I posted about it, which was like, what's the top things that you can do as an individual to reduce your climate impact? And me in the back of my head thinking, well, just stop, just eat more plant-based food, right? All the other ones that I tried, the big well-known AI companies didn't have that at all, not even in like the top five. And I was like, what is going on? Surely. And then I did try one, which was by Anthropic and Claude AI, and it did say consume plant-based food, like at least over 51%, I think it was. That is the top thing that each individual can do. And it's just like we have to get that message out more, because it's only going to be one of three things that sort of makes a shift on people. It's either going to be climate change, and it's going to be personal health, and then it's animal welfare. It's got to be one of those three. And generally, I think the other thing is like how to get people to sustain that. Veganuary had a great 2003. I think it was something like
1.8 million people that interacted with the resources, if you like, but that's on an international basis. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We did some YouGov polling in 8 different countries. So there was like the US, the UK, Germany, France, Italy. And based on that, it's like up to 25 million people internationally could have taken part. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So huge numbers, but it's also like, I always feel that if it's kind of outside of yourself, like as in if it's the animals that is the motivation, I think people become a lot more motivated when they have that versus them as a person. It's only going to benefit me, right? So I think if you have that mission as the animals, like I do, then you're more likely to stick with it and have that momentum, I feel. But it's also like going back to like the clever marketing. Food is cultural, right? So I think the was it the Australian one you said, or was it New Zealand, the lambing one?
That was in Australia.
Australia. Having it as part, like showing the different people and generations, having that as a family thing is clever, I would say, like from a marketing point of view, for sure. I mean, because people do want to see people enjoying food in the moment when they see these adverts, and they want to see that it looks good quality food. So all these marketing campaigns have been done like that for years. But like you say, if it costs them 4 million, where are we going to get that 4 million from? Like, especially as this decline on the industry will make people hesitant. So where do you think that money and that funding will come to help promote this to a larger scale then?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about how do we tap into climate money as a movement, and I know that the Farm Animal Funder Network is working on that as a priority over the next year or so. I don't know how much success we've had. I think in terms of more agnostic venture capital, I think that's going to be more of a struggle over the coming years. We were able to ride the wave with Beyond Meat and Oatly IPOs and some excitement around food tech, but that's disappeared, that's gone. So at the moment, from what I can see, it's mostly mission aligned, investors or philanthropists that really care about this, that are supporting the movement at the moment. So
yeah.
But I was interested in your point about going back to the large language models and how you didn't have a lot of success when it came to climate change, because I'm reading Hannah Ritchie's book at the moment, Not the End of the World. I'm only halfway through it, but she makes it very clear that there's two major solutions to climate change as one issue, and that is fossil fuels, which is the big one, and food, which is still about 25%. There's been research, I think it was at Madra Brava, that identified that, for every 1,000 media articles, let's say, there's only like 170 of them, like 17%, even mention livestock as one of the reasons that climate change is accelerating, human-induced. And then in those scenarios, that 17%, those articles tend to talk about how climate change is going to affect livestock production and food production in the future, rather than it necessarily being one of the issues. So I would imagine that if that's happening, looking at the internet as a whole, then the large language models are pulling information from the internet. That's my understanding at the moment. So, we're not cutting through. This is why I'm saying there's probably a window of opportunity for us to try and fix that somehow.
Yeah.
So these large language models are trained on real data.
Yeah.
That's not been skewed by cultural reasons or vested interests or a media bias or whatever it is. We just need to try and work on that as a priority. So that could work.
Yeah, and I've when I did that search, I actually got all the sources of that information that the AI was looking at. So it's definitely out there, and I think the work that climate healers are doing by Dr. Salish Rao, he's putting a really good campaign together, and I'll share it with you afterwards, like the video I got from him. So it's quite interesting, like just confirming about cows, for example, and methane and the connection with climate change, etc. But yeah, I think we definitely need to do more. And maybe that's the answer for tapping into climate change money, but it's also maybe we need to have more of an impact on media to tell the truth about the connection between climate change and animal farming.
Sentient Media are doing a very good job on that. I don't know if you follow their work. Check their website out, and they're really trying to make inroads into the mainstream media as well. The problem is that we're generally an underfunded movement, and it is that, going back to the David and Goliath sort of analogy, that's the challenge. So the same with Veganuary. I mean, we're so limited in terms of resources and funding, and the media's some parts of the media have criticised Veganuary for not continuing to keep growing at the same pace, but we are restricted, as being just a small team with limited resources, and we can't run big fancy TV ads like the meat industry can.
Yeah, totally. So I just wanted to talk to you about also the group making the purchase of Meatless Farm. How are you seeing that company feed to the potential long-term acceleration, if you like, or growth? Because there was such a big brand here in the UK, right? And also, I think, just to add to that, I think the segment that we got going after was also meat eaters versus strictly vegans. And I think, that's also interesting to see if that audience has also shifted a little bit from what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, my view at the moment are flexitarians are people that are open-minded to reducing their meat consumption, but they're not actually doing it at the moment. So how do we get those flexitarians to actually really, on a regular basis, reduce their consumption and choose these options? In terms of your question about Meatless Farm, I mean, it was, we felt at VFC, we were hearing what was going on because we were local companies, competitors, but, in different sort of categories. And we just felt that this was too good a business to lose. As you mentioned, a huge amount of money had been invested in the brand, in the intellectual property, in the product range. And consumers really, some of their products, really liked them. The mince particularly was a big seller, the chicken breasts as well. So there's a few of the range that, customers really valued and were purchasing at a high rate of sale.
Right.
They just run out of cash. So at the same time, VFC, me and Adam, when we set the business up, I guess we were set it up at the sort of the back end of the wave. And we expected, exponential growth of VFC, and similar to a lot of the other startups, we didn't experience that exponential growth that we anticipated. So it just made so much sense. You've got VFC not necessarily hitting the numbers. You've got Meatless Farm in difficulties. So when it went into administration, it made so much sense for us to buy the brand, buy the intellectual property, the website and all of that stuff, and really try and get that supply chain up and running. How do we get the retailers back on board? Now, I'm not saying it was easy, but the VFC team did a great job of re-engaging with suppliers, with customers, and it took some time, but now we're starting to see the fruits of that. So Meatless Farm is now the biggest part of what we're doing. It's bigger than what VFC is. So in many respects, we didn't just save Meatless Farm, we also saved VFC, being totally frank with you, by bringing them together.
Yeah.
We then brought Clive. Our Veg Capital had invested in Clive's, but it was a standalone. It was separate to Meatless Farm and VFC. But we realised that the team there would benefit from having Clive's as part of this wider group. So we created Vegan Food Group. We created this sort of holding company then with these three subsidies, and it's going well. The team there, just when you've got a centralized senior leadership team and you've got marketing, finance, sales, operations that can work together, you get all the economies of scale, you get the potentially better buying power. When you go to the retailers, you're not just talking about vegan chicken anymore. You're talking about pies. You're talking about mince and sausages and burgers. And, the feedback that we're getting from the retailers is that they want to cut the amount of suppliers that they've got and work with a smaller range of suppliers that they can rely on, that they can build a relationship with. So that's really working in our favor.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've just made a very awesome acquisition, buying Tofu Town, which is actually a company that I hadn't heard from before. It's a German tofu manufacturer, and you've just acquired them within the group. What can you tell me about this company and also the plant-based industry in Germany?
Yeah, so I'd never heard of Tofu Town either, being honest with you, but they're a business that was started 40 years ago by this inspiring, almost like hippie, if you like, making tofu. He actually got arrested and put in jail for 2 days for making tofu. That's how tricky things were 40 years ago. So look what progress we've made now. I think it was to do with it being a novel food. But anyway, Bernd built this business organically over 40 years. The business in 2020 did 60 million in sales, 60 million in revenue. And that was tofu, spreads. So they have a bottling line that's putting spreads that you would put on sandwiches. And they also do a lot of the meat alternatives as well. So some of them like a very German flavor to them. So currywurst and schnitzels, those type of products. We've acquired the business. It has 2 facilities. The one in Lundberg near Hamburg is massive. I mean, I got my 10,000 steps in just having a tour around the factory. It's just to give you an idea on the scale. It's got warehousing with up to 5,000 pallets. It's got huge lines. Over the years, this business has invested tens of millions in machinery and in equipment. And yeah, I mean, they're a major supplier into Aldi, Lidl, Edeka, DM. They supply HelloFresh. All of this in the German market. So they're more of a private label supplier, which is why they maybe have gone under the radar a bit. But I think the Lundberg factory, as far as I'm aware, it's the biggest plant-based factory in Europe, possibly the world. I mean, I need to double check it, but it is, honestly, it's massive. So we're looking at that from a vegan food group perspective and thinking, well, how do we take advantage? Because it's got huge capacity. I mean, it's, there's room to grow within that facility.
Okay, right.
So we can start talking about producing more lines, VFC and Meatless farm lines in that factory. We can start bringing other product ranges to that factory. We can start looking at some of the products that they already produce in Germany and bringing those into the UK market and other European markets, even looking and talking with people in Australia and other parts of the world. So, it gives us the scale, it gives us the distribution, it gives us the manufacturing that we didn't really have with VFC, Meatless Farm and Clive's.
Yeah, I mean that's an awesome idea. So yeah, especially if you can add more product items to the existing lines that they've got and scale it out across Europe would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean our hope is to take what we've now got with the 3 brands and the Tofu Town facility and all of the own label, private label business that they have,
Yeah.
And then move towards 100 million in sales over the next 12, 18, 24 months. That's
Okay.
the
Yeah.
plan. We also pretty confident that we can get to profitability this year, or certainly by the end of this year. That is, can't promise that, but there's a very good chance that we will be able to do that through
Yeah.
this consolidation. Look,
Right.
I think there's real opportunity for M&A activity. And I think that the startup brand ethos, merging that into businesses that have been trading for a long time, that know how to produce product, that know how to deliver it on time, that have all of the infrastructure and the equipment already in place. When you start merging them together, you get the best of both worlds. And that's, I think,
Yeah.
what we're going to have with the Tofu Town
Yeah.
opportunity. And I think that you're going to see a lot more of that. And I think VFG now, I mean, there's going to be a period where we need to consolidate that business into Vegan Food Group, but it's not the end of what we'll do. We will look at other opportunities over the next 18 months, 2 years for sure.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about Tofu Town and Lazy Town. Do you remember that show? There was an animation. It was called Lazy Town years ago, and they had these characters in it. And to encourage the kids to have apples, they called it sports candy. So every time you say Tofu Town, I always thinking of Lazy Town and sports candy, and maybe have tofu candy instead. Maybe there's a co-branding opportunity, but I don't think the show's lasts anymore.
I'll mention it with the head of marketing and see what she thinks.
But yeah, I mean, so you mentioned about more consolidation happening. Where do you see the gaps now? Like if you were, painting the picture between these companies within the group, do you see any specific market? Obviously, Germany is a huge market for people who are on a plant-based diet. Where do you see, either from a country point of view or product point of view, I guess, from the acquisition side?
Yeah, so Vegan Food Group will trade in chilled and frozen primarily. But we're not touching all of the products categories within chilled and frozen at the moment. We'll be developing into food service and retail, but we've got the whole of the EU to go at, and we've got the UK market. We're not going to be approaching the US through this entity. Meatless Farm struggled to open up that opportunity. And VFC, we pulled back as well. Very, very difficult, but highly competitive, and it's expensive to launch into the United States. So at least for the time being, we're not going to do that through the operation that we have in the UK. In terms of other products, I mean, it's looking at, where are the gaps? We don't want to cannibalize what we've already got. So it doesn't make sense to take on, other vegan chicken brands. We have sort of a threshold that we're really going to try and stick to, and that's businesses that are already at 3 million plus in sales, whether that's pounds or euros or dollars, in that range. So that actually, of the opportunities that have been coming our way, sort of eliminates quite a few. So that doesn't mean that we don't value the opportunity, but just for us, as we stand, we're looking to sort of buy and build and we're looking for brands that have already had significant traction, that have already developed their supply chains, that have already gained the listings. We don't want to cannibalize what we've got. We don't want products that are already competing with our current ranges, but there's still a lot of opportunity to start to build out the portfolio. And we're also, one of the things is with the Tofu Town facilities is we can really start talking with suppliers about private label and own label products, because there has been a shift towards that. So, we can sit down with a retailer and say, well, look, we can help you with some of the private label ranges that you want to develop, but will you support our brands at the same time and build a partnership in that way?
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, definitely with the larger supermarkets, there's a big appetite for that. Also from a consumer cost point of view as well, I guess. So yeah, it does make sense to have that. But then as long as the risk isn't there with them just swapping out for somebody else, and using that as leverage, that's the power that they have on that.
Well, we need to deliver on what we need to do. So, if we're a good
Yeah,
supplier and we're hitting the right price points and the
right.
products are good, then we're pretty confident.
Yeah. So how's Veg Capital doing at the moment? Like they've got their portfolio of companies that have been invested in. Earlier, we spoke about the market and it being down with investors' appetite, also with many other, not just Veg Capital, obviously, but many other VC firms and the appetite to invest in new startups. And obviously, when you're looking at companies, you want them to have that stability by having that revenue growth. What's their focus at the moment, other than making sure that the current portfolio is surviving, I guess?
I mean, you've hit on it there, actually. It is about survival and supporting the portfolio that we already have. So me and Cliff have decided to have that separate focuses. So Cliff Johnson is the other co-director of Veg Capital. So I'm focusing more on vegan food group, which is the biggest part of Veg Capital's portfolio anyway. So that's how the chief mission officer sort of idea came up, and looking at the chief mission officer from a vegan food group also includes looking at M&A opportunities as well as working on the mission, if you like. And then Cliff, what he's doing is just looking after the rest of the portfolio in simple terms. So, trying to support the portfolio companies where we can. Obviously, some of those are coming up to points at which they're going to need additional working capital to sustain the next level of growth. So we're going to look at those on a case-by-case basis. In terms of startups and seed funding for new businesses, we haven't done any of that for about 18 months, 2 years, or anything significant. And it's not a priority for us. I think that doesn't mean that we don't think there needs to be a constant stream of new startups coming into, to bring new ideas and new technologies. It's just that from a Veg Capital perspective, we've decided that our focus should be, in terms of time and resources and funding, should be on M&A activity and supporting Vegan Food Group, and then supporting the existing portfolio through VegCap.
Yeah. And the other thing that you've been doing really well, especially with VFC, has been when you've been filming conditions in animal farming. I think over the years, since I've been doing this show, I realized how important it is to have this activism element and actually show the conditions of factory farming. So it's made public and people do see the conditions that these animals are raised in. Plus, obviously, that side, but in general, just documentary filmmaking, I think makes a huge difference in forming people's opinions or getting people to start a journey. Like even for me, when I watch YouTube videos like Dairy is Scary, for example, and then going on my own journey to find out more by, whether it's What the Health or Cowspiracy or Game Changers now, the recent documentary, We Are What You Eat, the twin experiment. And then just the other day, I watched Pignorant by Joey Carbstrong. He puts himself in real danger. And it's like, wow, he's done this to tell the world how these pigs are being slaughtered in gas chambers, which people think is humane, but it's totally not humane. So I think it's vitally important. What's your views with people doing filmmaking, especially that you've done it yourself as well?
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment that you just provided. I mean, it was footage of cruelty that switched me, you know, that sort of jolted me, if you like, into going vegan and caring about this mission so much that I've dedicated my life to it. And I've met many people that have gone through that same scenario. Documentaries punch above their weight in terms of an advocacy tool. You know, that's supported by social media content as well. You know, like you mentioned the Dairy Scary videos.
Yeah.
I agree entirely. I've been working on and off for the last 18 months, 2 years with a small team, and we filmed inside various different farms. We've met experts, and some of that content will be coming out soon, hopefully. And the team are working on a documentary format as well. It's going to take a year or two before it's available. You know, these things do take time to release. So, but yeah, I mean, we support, through my work with the foundation in the background, we're supporting a number of different documentaries that are coming out. Pignorant was one of them. There's a big one coming up shortly, Christspiracy, from Anderson and Cameron, who's teamed up on this one, and really looking at the spirituality and the morality and the ethics angle. I've seen a preview of it, and it's powerful. I mean, probably arguably a better film than Cowspiracy, and that one actually did reach a huge audience and was very important. So very excited to see how that one performs when it is released, which is coming very soon.
Is there a spiritual way to kill an animal? I'll put it this way. How would Jesus kill an animal?
Yeah, I'm due to have Kip on the show
as well. Brilliant.
Yeah, so he'll come on, and I think they made a decision also with Netflix, like it wasn't going to go on their platform. I'm not sure if you spoke to him about that as well, like from a distribution point of view. Yeah,
they had to buy it back from Netflix, didn't they? They're going the self-publishing route, is my understanding. So but I think Kip was saying they've got some sort of very clever platform where you can watch it for free, and then if you liked what you watched, that you pay for it at the end, which is an interesting concept. So I really hope it works. And they have a target of 1 billion viewers. So I mean, if it does reach that level of people, then going back to the questions about category growth and stuff like that, we'll just suddenly see categories in growth, and we won't understand why. And it'll be the efforts of people like Kip and other documentary filmmakers that have put their heart and soul into and putting themselves in these dangerous scenarios that will help the cause, in terms of the business side of things.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think people, especially some of these documentaries that are being produced, are quite serious, right, in terms of their message? I think there has been films, like I think it was Coffee Wars, wasn't it?
I want you to know I will never drink so much as a thimbleful of the milk they extract from you. Fist bump.
Is that the way you think she should be remembered? Is not good enough to eat?
Meet Joel Hansen.
Good morning!
This is her plant-based coffee shop.
You're a coffee place and you don't serve regular milk?
No.
Did I mention that Joel is extremely broke?
You have to make a payment now, or you're done.
Do you think I can get an advance?
Like 100 against my paycheck.
And why don't you compete again?
Work for Rudy.
I'll make you one. It was steamed cow's milk. Joe, luck with that vegan thing.
The World Barista Championships with a cash prize of 50,000 euros.
In espresso. Aren't you that nutter from Nationals that went completely mental?
What? No! This is a coffee competition, not a milk competition!
That nut milk has turned her into a nutter. This year, we need a drink that wins it all.
For our signature drink.
The civet cat eats the coffee cherries, poops out the beans and creates a distinctively savoury flavour.
Did the cat eat a bunch of garlic chili paste?
Oh, that was me.
These coffee beans come from you. I like it.
These cherries, they are the very best of the best.
This is exactly what I need.
Yes! It is a coffee taste bud takedown.
Lisa!
All right, keep your hair on.
It's winner takes all!
This is the Everest of coffee excellence, and there's only one way to scale it. Together.
I'll put you out of business.
Well, you better win this thing then.
I am all in.
Have some faith, I'll make you a believer.
Now brewing. And by the way, I'm not Morgan Freeman.
And that was about a vegan barista entering a competition and that. Do you think there should be more light-hearted type footage? Because I guess some people might not want to go too much in depth in the topic areas of, like, especially if it's, some people would be uncomfortable about seeing certain footage, for example. What's your opinion on that? I mean, do we need to appeal to more groups?
Yeah, so I think there has been films in the past that have created vegetarians and created vegans where it hasn't just been animal cruelty or serious documentary filmmaking. Babe was one in the past.
Right.
Chicken Run, I think the first version was successful. I'm not sure how well the second one,
the last one,
last has done in terms of helping from a diet change perspective. Okia or Okja, I don't remember if you remember that one.
Yeah, remember that one, yeah.
We did see quite an increase in the amount of people that were searching for vegan immediately after that film was released. So
interesting, yeah.
And that was a fictional film. So yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, I've talked with people in the past about how do we create a vegan film studio, like a Hollywood studio, where it's a production line of continuous films, and some of those films would be fiction, some of them would be non-fiction documentaries.
Yeah.
And, you know, producing 4 or 5 of those a year.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Who's going to fund it, though?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Who's going to run it? That's the challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I
wouldn't mind going to Hollywood, mind you, and if somebody wants to pay me to go and try and develop a Hollywood studio.
And set up. Yeah. I mean, there's so many documentaries that are also unknown, like short films, for example. Like, there's a number on Unchained TV as well, which is a great source of documentaries. I think with streaming platforms, it does make it more accessible. Not everyone will be able to pay for those, but once this idea that Kip has now to sort of pay it forward, if you like, I think is a thing. But I think that's what we want. We want more people to be exposed to the message. I think going back to where it could drive the growth, and whether it's serious topics, more lighthearted stuff that's aimed at kids. Also, I don't know if you know, Tina Newman is looking to produce a
children's book
animation with her book title that she's got with Vivi, the sort of superhero. Yeah. So even things like that will start to help, I think, with the message.
For sure. I don't have all the answers, but I think we need different strategies, don't we? And it's clear that to reach people, everybody's different, aren't they? So, sometimes there's going to be, it's just animal cruelty that's going to capture people. But others are not going to be minded that way. I remember sending, when I first went vegan, I was running a business with a business partner. And, I really wanted him to understand what had happened to me. So I sent him Earthlings. And him and his wife watched Earthlings together. And he said, Matthew, I get it, I understand it, but I did eat a steak immediately afterwards. And what can you say to that? I respect his honesty. Some people just don't necessarily feel the same way that we do. So that's why you try different strategies. That's why health and nutrition might work for other people. That's why the environmental aspect. But that's why we also can't rely just on diet change advocacy. We need to work on policy. We need to work on alternative protein to get to a point where the products compare in terms of price, availability, and texture and taste, so that they just switch without even thinking about it.
Yeah,
You've got to
100%.
try it all.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for coming back on the show. It was great to get this update from you. And I know there's negative trends at the moment in the industry, but I'm still very positive that it will bounce back. And especially with all the things that you're working on and the things that are coming out also on the media side. And I think I'm quite excited with where your group is going in terms of the acquisitions that you're making, especially when it comes to manufacturing and different markets. So yeah, so keep up the strong fight, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks. I hope I haven't been too downbeat. It's been a tough couple of years, but I'm not going anywhere. I'll keep trying, just as, in my little space of the corner of the movement. I'll keep doing my stuff. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And anybody that's listening, just keep trying to learn, improve, become more effective, and keep at it, because it's such an important mission.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you again, Matthew, and speak to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, cheers. Take care. Bye.